Hi everyone, welcome back to Unwrapped, bite-sized sex ed where we talk about things sex, reproduction, puberty, and unsurprisingly, fertility. My name is Ava and I will be the host of this series. Today's topic is reproductive hormones. Now don't get too scared, hormones are nothing to be afraid of. They're just chemicals in our bodies that send messages around to keep everything running smoothly. And in the case of reproductive hormones, they play a big role in the growth and development of our reproductive organs and our ability to reproduce and have babies. As you might have already realised, nearly everything I talk about is linked to fertility because no one bloody talks about it. So sit down and lock in. Like in the last episode, I'll be discussing the main hormones involved in female and male reproductive systems. But remember, as we discussed, those who are intersex can have a different mix and different levels of both. This is completely normal, and importantly, the hormones someone produces do not have to reflect their gender identity. Right. The sex hormones really kick in during adolescence, and the timing is different for each of us. And this is referred to what we call as puberty. This can be influenced by things like ethnicity, body weight, genetics, and even environmental factors. The trigger for us all comes from the brain in this little portion called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus starts to release a very long, convoluted hormone called gonadotropin-releasing hormone. I know, a bit of a tongue twister. But this acts like a messenger to the pituitary gland, which then releases luteinizing hormone, or LH, and follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH. These hormones travel in the bloodstream and signal our reproductive organs to start producing testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. A little bit of a fun fact is that we all produce all three of these hormones, regardless of our sex. You might have been told that some are exclusive to males or females, but in reality, we all have them just in different amounts. In people with male reproductive organs, testosterone is the primary reproductive hormone, though they still produce small amounts of estrogen and progesterone. Here's how it works. Gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the brain stimulates the pituitary to release luteinizing hormone, or LH, and the testes get the message to start pumping out testosterone. Testosterone's main reproductive role is to trigger sperm production. Once this kicks in, someone with testes becomes reproductively competent, which pretty much just means they can make functional sperm. Testosterone also drives a range of physical changes in puberty in those with male reproductive systems. And this is things like increased muscle mass and strength, the growth of facial, body, and pubic hair, the deepening of your voice, or what some like to call the growth of an Adam's apple, and increased growth of the penis and testes. But importantly, testosterone's job doesn't end at reproduction. It is also crucial for our red blood cells, and these are the cells that carry oxygen around the body. It's also important for things like bone strength and muscle health, and our libido, which is the desire we feel to engage in sexual activity. And because everyone produces testosterone, even in small amounts, it matters for all bodies. For those with ovaries, it comes mainly from the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, and the ovaries themselves. When there is dysregulated testosterone in those with female reproductive organs, different conditions can arise, such as polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS for short. PCOS happens when the ovaries might make a little bit more testosterone than usual, which can affect periods, ovulation, and things like skin and hair growth. This is quite common, and there are ways to manage it with lifestyle changes or medicine. Because ovulation, a process I'll cover in a later episode, doesn't always happen regularly in people with PCOS, it can make it a little bit harder to become pregnant. But this is super important. A lot of people with PCOS do become pregnant, either naturally or with support from doctors if they need it. Some people with testes also naturally have varying levels of testosterone. And this can be due to genetic conditions like Klinefelter syndrome, where a person has an extra X chromosome, among other reasons. Now, we've wrapped up testosterone, let's get on to estrogen. So in people with female reproductive organs, gonadotropin-releasing hormone from the brain signals the pituitary to release follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH, which tell the ovaries to make estrogen. At puberty, estrogen drives the development of breast tissue, the widening of hips, and fat distribution that prepares the body for a potential pregnancy. It also contributes to the growth of pubic and underarm hair. Now, estrogen plays its starring role in the menstrual cycle by helping the uterine lining, or the endometrium, grow and prepare for a possible pregnancy. High levels of estrogen also cause ovulation, which is the release of an egg from the ovary. But again, more on this next episode where I dive into menstruation and periods. But, like testosterone, estrogen isn't just about reproduction. It can help keep our bones strong, supports heart health, influences our mood and brain function, and contributes to healthy skin. That's why everyone, regardless of sex, makes at least some estrogen. In people with testes, estrogen is made in much smaller amounts by converting testosterone into estrogen in places like the testes, brain, fat tissue, and bone. Now, we've covered testosterone and estrogen. We're now going to move on to progesterone, which is also produced by the ovaries in people with female reproductive systems. After ovulation, the ovary releases progesterone, and its main role is preparing the innermost layer of the uterus, or what is called the endometrium, to make it ready for a potentially fertilized egg to implant. You can think of it as like a soft, squishy layer that changes throughout the menstrual cycle. The endometrium itself has different layers, but the most important one here is called the functional layer. This is the part that changes due to progesterone and thickens each month, preparing to support a pregnancy if a fertilized egg arrives. If a pregnancy doesn't happen, progesterone hormones drop and the functional layer of the endometrium breaks down and sheds. This is what flows out of the body during a period, but again, more in this next episode. Like estrogen, progesterone also plays a role outside of reproduction. It's involved in brain function, the immune system, and can even serve as a building block to make other hormones in males. People with testes produce small amounts of progesterone too, mainly in the adrenal glands and the testes. So, that's all of the reproductive hormones. In all of us, it begins with a surge of gonadotropin-releasing hormone. Say it with me, gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which then causes follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone to be secreted into the bloodstream of us all. Depending on the reproductive organs we have, this either causes a larger increase of testosterone produced by the testes and smaller amounts of estrogen and progesterone, or in those with female reproductive organs, we get a larger surge of estrogen and progesterone and a small amount of testosterone to be produced. This helps us all become reproductively capable and causes some other changes to our bodies. But importantly, all of these hormones are really crucial to our health. So that's all for today's episode of Unwrapped, a little bit shorter than our last one, but thank you so much for listening. And in our next episode, we're going to zoom in on how these hormones work together across the menstrual cycle and different menstrual diseases like endometriosis. So, if you enjoyed today's chat, you'll definitely want to tune in. Thanks for listening, and this is Ava on Unwrapped.